Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudes, in this series on the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's segment is based on an email I received on the 10th of June forwarding a YouTube video in French called Stop the Criminal Swiss Nazi. On the YouTube page is the information that pharaonic nobility rules the planet out of Switzerland. We have learned that the CIA is headquartered in Switzerland, not Langley, Virginia. I put this information up on my social media, and people asked me to translate it. I'm glad to oblige, but first let me give you some background. On the 12th of April, I devoted a segment to Switzerland. The email includes some gematria. Wikipedia defines gematria as, quote, a Syro-Babylonian Greek system of alphanumeric code cipher later adopted into Jewish culture, which assigns numerical value to a word, name, phrase, in the belief that words or phrases with identical numerical values bear some relation to each other or bear some relation to the number itself as it may apply to nature, a person's age, the calendar year, or the like. The Paris attack was on Friday the 13th, and 1291, if you add it together, 1 plus 2 plus 9 plus 1 equals 13, the day the Templars were arrested in France and the day that Switzerland was founded in 1291 by 13. I want to preface this translation by saying that I do not agree with this author, his name is Jean Houros, in two fundamental ways. The first is that there's no extraterrestrial aspect to the global currency reset. That's a way of distracting us from the task at hand. Also, this author is still very susceptible to the divide and conquer mentality. Now for the translation, and when I say I'm really talking about Jean Houros. It's called Stop the Criminal Swiss Nazi Templars. I was there years ago when Swiss industrialists discussed the future of France when the Nazis' Octagon Templars and victors of the Second World War decided to carry out terrorist operations in a false flag operation in Paris. ISIS, as this is still called by its members, serves the house of Isis as a royal home of the widow. And several times I tried to warn the French authorities by letters, not emails, videos, and by 2 complaints against the Swiss state before 2 French courts in Boulogne on Wednesday, the February 11th, 2014, and in Mende on March 24th, 2014. We are now in 2016. That makes it exactly 2 years. I've never received a response, a call, an email, a letter, nothing at all. And with my information, we would have been able to avoid the tragedies of Paris and could have stopped the Swiss Octagon, because I knew they would hit on a Friday the 13th in Paris, precisely because Friday, October 13th, 1307, the French King Philip the Fair arrested all the Templars in France, and that is why the Swiss and their Nazi Templar Octagon still hate France and the French. Only 16 years before the Templars had already founded Switzerland, on August 1st, 1291, as they saw future problems. So this day of August 1st, when the Templars founded Switzerland, is the national holiday of Switzerland. That's their July 4th. So the last of the Crusades took place in 1291, and the last stronghold of the Knights Templar, St. Jean d'Acre, in northern Israel, was falling on the 18th of May in 1291. And only 2.5 months later, when returning, the Templars founded Switzerland on the 1st of August, 1291. When we look at the flag of Switzerland, it's the same color as the red and white cross of the Knights Templar. The cross of the Templars is the only flag in the world that is not rectangular but a square. And unlike the white Swiss cross on a red background, it's a red cross on a white background, and it comes from the Knights Hospitaller, which were the predecessors of the Templars. And on the Swiss knife, there's really an emblem of a Templar shield. And why these two red and white colors on the flag of the Swiss Templars? The pharaohs of Egypt had two empires, that of the southern Upper Egypt, or Per Het, or White House, with a white crown, and Per Tasser for Lower Egypt, called the Red House. Yes, the White House of the President of the United States in Washington, D.C. also comes from this. And note that the word Per is the same word that is used in Per Isis in Paris for the home of the royal line and descendants of the widow Isis. And since the purpose of the Crusades were the pyramids of Egypt, where the Templars found their treasure, they gave both red and white colors of the United Kingdom of the Pharaohs to Switzerland, because these two warring kingdoms had red and white colors. When they made peace, they formed a great United Kingdom of the Pharaohs. And when these Templars, who are the descendants of the Pharaohs, which I will explain later, came to Europe, they said, "That's our neutral base where we can put our valuables and money safely." This is also the base for NGOs like the Red Cross, the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, even FIFA for football, the Organization for the Olympic Games, etc. All are there. Switzerland's neutrality is not for people, not for us, but for our pharaonic masters and aristocratic lords who hold peace negotiations between warring nations in Geneva. But there was also a third crown, the blue crown of war, and that's why the nations that make war for these pharaohs, our lords, have three colors: blue, white, red, like France, England, the United States, the Netherlands. Old red and white colors of the French flag symbolizing the United Kingdom of the Pharaohs, and blue for war. Like the blue caskets for the pharaohs and for the blue crown of Pharaoh, and after that the negotiations in Geneva, which has taken the colors of the United Peace Kingdom, red and white of the pharaohs. The Templars were actually not monks, but aristocrats. But under the rules of primogeniture and the law of the pharaohs, only the first son was entitled to everything: castle, power, land, concubines, everything. And a second or third son would have nothing, absolutely nothing. That's why there were so many conspiracies and poisonings for succession in the courtyard at the castle. But normally it was traditional for the sons there to take refuge in monasteries. At one time there were so many offspring without power, they said, "But we too are aristocrats, and we want our own kingdom." But for a kingdom we need money. So to have military support of those stupid Europeans, they said that there in Jerusalem Jesus lives with his grandmother, and we must save him from the Saracens. If not, God will punish us with the fire of hell, and it will be the end of the world. Same as 1,000 years later, they said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. All lied in using the same tactic. And in 1099, sponsored by Templar Crusaders, there was a terrible massacre in Jerusalem of Jews and Muslims, which these Templars, Swiss Nazis, have repeated during the Nazi era. The real purpose of the Crusades was to loot Egypt and the treasures of their ancestors in the pyramids. What became of the famous treasure of the Templars? They brought it to their kingdom in the Alps to found the Swiss banks, and indeed the Templars became the bankers of Europe, and that is why later Swiss banks have collaborated with the Nazis. And when these Templars of pharaonic origin arrived in Switzerland, they named their country for the sisters of Isis, Suis. The pharaohs of Egypt have never disappeared. Their current base is in central Switzerland, central to the tap of water and the tap of money. They speak 4 languages to be able to act in all directions. And it was written in the Bible that the Pharaoh and his army disappeared into the sea. But of course, the sea did not open. What happened was the army disappeared into the sea of people, and they are among us. And when they came to Europe, they all built castles to conquer Europe, and they became the aristocracy with their blue blood, blue meaning for war. Because of them, there were constant wars in human history. You see Pharaoh with his aristocratic blue blood typing on humanity. And in less than 100 years, everything belonged to them, land, power, and even our women by the ius primae, noctis, or droit de seigneur, in which the first night after the wedding, the groom was to leave his woman at the castle in the bed of the Lord. And that's why we found the genetics of ADN pharaohs among many Europeans. Then you think they left like that and they disappeared without a trace? As there were too many revolutions, including France and Russia, the nobility decided to secretly rule in Masonic lodges, and all politicians are Freemasons and aristocrats. That's why the Freemasons show objects from their ancestors, the pharaohs, as obelisks, and Yachin Boas, pyramids, the widow Isis, the eye seeing all of Horus, etc. And actually, as there were more and more aristocratic and royal descendants of the pharaohs in Egypt, who all wanted to be king, there were wars between kings and between the castles. So we proposed the New World Order in a Masonic system in which each of them could be king for a period of 4, 5, or 7 years. But who will vote? One member said, because between us we're too aware. Ah, said another, we will let the people vote because they are too stupid to understand. Allow the demos, the people to vote in a circus. They'll appreciate it will give them the illusion that the people reign. And so that democracy was born from the bourgeoisie. And if there's a new world order, logically there's an old world order. And what is it, that old world order? Well, that's the feudal system of kings, queens, and princes and princesses. And from the Templars and their Swiss base, the Freemasons and their New World Order is born after their war with the Old World Order and persecution by the King of France, Philippe le Bel, who would not give up the door to the throne. And that's why these Templars' New World Order, with the Swiss mercenaries in the Bastille, who tortured French citizens to provoke the revolution and the end of the Old World Order. Thus, the Templars gradually infiltrated French society by Swiss mercenaries. Orders of the Templars in France are now in all key positions, with Swiss Manuel Valls at the head, wanting Marine Le Pen as president, which in turn shows Switzerland as a model for France and speaks of it openly. See my videos on my YouTube channels. All the evidence is all there. And the Swiss guards at the Vatican. Even the Foreign Legion was founded by the Swiss, with as first commander Colonel von Stoffel, a Swiss, and French King Louis-Philippe, who spent most of his life in Switzerland, like Mussolini, Lenin, the traitor Pétain, Rudolf Hess, Mengele, etc. They all lived in Switzerland. The symbol of royal dignity of the pharaohs is the lion or the sphinx, and that's why that an aristocratic coat of arms is still held by 2 lions, and 2 lions at the entrance of the castle. But there's never been lions in Europe. It means that there's a foreign power that reigns in France and around the world, because we in Europe were wolves and bears and no lions. And when I translate in a ari or stocraticary in the demotic and written language of the pharaohs, that means a pregnant or large. And when a woman is pregnant, it's big, and R is the sun, as the sun god Re or Ra. So Ari, it means pregnant, sun. They were born over there, these sun worshippers, pharaonic sun. My Muslim brothers, the enemies are not the Jews, as the Swiss say, the Nazis, but the enemy is the Pharaoh, with their base Nazis Templars in Switzerland. And Pharaoh is designated as evil incarnate in the Quran, the Bible, and the Torah. And Pharaoh will put Europe's Muslims in concentration camps, like the Swiss did with the Jews during the Second World War. Take a guy like Sarkozy, who is Jewish on the side of his mother, Andrei Mallah in Greece, but it's also an aristocrat and from a line of Hungarian kings, and that's why he has this Tsar syllable in his name. It's an abbreviation for His Royal Highness, and it means the king in the Demotic language of the pharaohs, as in a sarcophagus. It's a box to put the king in when he died. Or as King Caesar of Rome, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, Tsar of Russia, Windsor, family of England, and the king of France, Sarkozy, to 7 or 5 years. Then there's that Sarko. Is what he is a Jew or is he an aristocrat? It's like asking Prince Charles if he's a prince or English. He will not tell you, but he will think that he's an aristocrat, and being English is something for the people. So is this Mr. Sarko. It's first aristocrat, and long time after a Jew, and still long time after that, he's French, without a drop of French blood. And this elite class put away their loot without exception through tax evasion in their red and white neutral base, this United Kingdom of the Pharaohs in Switzerland. There are 80 billion French euros, which eventually land in Switzerland because the aristocratic bourgeoisie never pays taxes, but it's them who invented taxes and became parasites on the hungry people while they partied at the castle with our wives and taxes. And all that endures to this day, made possible by their financial base for the global elites in the Alps. And when in October 2010, the young Austrian Wolfgang Umvogel wanted to sell bank CD with dates, names, and figures on tax evasion in Switzerland, Germany, France, and the US IRS, the Swiss secret nabbed and one committed suicide in just 2 weeks in a torture center for immigrants, Amthaus Bern. So I, Sean Gross, contacted the largest newspaper in Austria, the Kronen Zeitung, and helped write an article, and they published that the young man was tortured and killed by the code O2T oxygen deprivation. When the corrupt Swiss authorities and 100% fascists have read and seen my name, Octagon sent me an anti-terrorist unit for mafia intimidation. The arrest was published in the newspaper Blick. I filmed in my channel YouTube. After I received death threats from the Swiss police, who beat me and lied and did things to silence me, and I have witnesses to that. Finally, they forbid me from mentioning anything about terror in Switzerland. Terror on YouTube, which I refuse because what I publish is the truth, and we can see on YouTube how the Swiss strike me, and everything is published under U.S. law. After I did not dare leave the house for 4 years, until on the 16th of July 2015, when the Swiss authorities kidnapped me and held me for a ransom of 20,000 Swiss francs, until my wife paid the rest of the ransom. For all this organized crime, Swiss against me and my family, crimes against France, crimes against humanity, and crimes against the Jewish people in the Holocaust, organized by the Swiss, I want to complain. And I made documentaries in English on my channel and YouTube, and the name that is on the YouTube channel is Giureh, and then Chatzefratz, that's Giura Chatzefratz, such as the murder of the French minister Robert Boulin, organized by Octagon Swiss Templars, Nazis, poisoning an entire French village, Saint-Esprit bridge with several dead, for the Swiss can better sell LSD to the CIA with Allen Dulles and J. Edgar Hoover, every two from Switzerland to head the CIA and FBI, such as Octagon, has infiltrated La France. The Presidents Eisenhower and Herbert Hoover's real name, Huber, that were all Swiss, and even Obama had Swiss ancestors. Riet Kerzers, the canton of Bern, and the criminal Erich Honecker, president of East Germany, was also Swiss. When Swiss Herbert Hoover became president, only a few months later, the Swiss caused the Wall Street crash of the U.S. stock market to steal the savings of simple American citizens. And on this occasion, a few months later, the Bank of International Settlements was founded, in Basel, Switzerland. That's the central bank of all central banks, like the U.S. Federal Reserve, which transferred the stolen money to the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Bank Nazi Hjalmar Schacht, and 33-degree Mason Bank Adolf Hitler to finance the Nazi war industry. Hitler was already in Zurich, Switzerland in 1923, when General Ulrich Willy Switzerland married into the aristocracy. Von Bismarck invited to Switzerland because Rudolf Hess was educated at the Polytechnic of Zurich, and the Swiss Octagon Templar Nazis financed conditions to massacre all the Jews of Europe and to destroy France. Subsequently, the Swiss have put all their men at the head of the Nazi fury as the Minister of the Reich Health SS Obergruppenführer Dr. Leonardo Conti, with his nickname Switzerland, sadistic, born in Ticino in Switzerland, as the maternal family of Manuel Valls. He was responsible for experimentation on 400,000 people, and, like Dr. Joseph Mengele, Conti was an ethnic Swiss who, after the war, lived protected by the Swiss authorities in the Badhauserstrasse 9 in Kloten, Zurich, and that was to ski at Engelsberg, the mountain of angels, while he was the angel of death at Auschwitz, for his son Rolf was educated at the most expensive boarding school in the world in Montreux. After the commissioner of police in Bern, the Swiss capital, Dr. Heinrich Rothmund, was given a Red Cross passport to go to Argentina as Klaus Barbie, the butcher of Lyon. Adolf Eichmann and the rest of the Templar Swiss Nazis, tens of thousands of criminals of the Nazi war, were given Red Cross passports. Standartenführer SS Colonel Karl Jaeger, born in Schaffhausen, it was also a home and the head of Einsatzgruppen, the wave of assassins behind the German army to liquidate the civilian population in Russia, and it has noted in the report Jaeger how they killed 400,000 Jews in the pits, including 32,000 children, by hand. The main brain behind Adolf Hitler and world father of eugenics was the Swiss doctor Ernst Rudin, born in St. Gallen, Switzerland, and as Dr. Mengele, the first commander of the first extermination camp, Sobibor, SS Sturmbannführer, was Christian Wirth. Christian was nicknamed the Terrible, was also an ethnic Swiss. This is also true of Rudolf Höss, the commander of Auschwitz, as well as Julius Streicher, who published the racist magazine Der Stürmer, which showed the other races and religions like animals, just like Charlie Hebdo. Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, etc., they were all ethnic Swiss. What is an ethnic Swiss? During the War of 30 Years between 1618 until 1648, about 100,000 Swiss mercenaries under Templar control have made a real genocide of the German people, killing 20 million Germans and their children, corresponding to 2/3 of the German population. Whole cities have disappeared from the earth, and these Swiss mercenaries told their compatriots in the homeland, "That's it, It's free directory. You can install it. So in the south of Germany, Baden-Württemberg, a large part of Bavaria, Vorarlberg, and Alsace are ethnic Swiss who replaced the indigenous population of origin and who speak German dialect. That's so ethnic Swiss, like most of these Nazi leaders. And they were all ethnic Swiss, and yet Gallo-Roman Alsace-Swiss mercenaries have killed 95% of the population, giving the name Al-Alsace. They're all Alsatian, not French and not German, because they're Swiss. It's today the richest parts of Germany and France for obvious reasons. In 2014, there was word in major international newspapers that Switzerland wants to build a great empire now with Alsace, southern Germany, western Austria, and northern Italy, and repatriate to the Reich all ethnic Swiss. It worked throughout history as a buffer. Thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. This extraordinary letter found its way to my inbox, and I wanted to share it with you. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudes.